Hello, everybody, and welcome to Toy Geeks. My name is Jake Laffelter from Geek Dad Life.
And I'm Dan Larson from Secret Galaxy.
And we're here to dive into your favorite toy lines 1 year at a time. And we have arrived into the 90s, the roaring night, the jammin' 90s. What? I don't know what we call
I
it.
don't think it has a cool nickname.
No, yeah, right. I just realized that now. Do the 80s have the totally rad 80s?
Cocaine fueled? I don't know.
And we arrived at the penultimate, second to last year of Kenner's Real Ghostbusters toy line. And joining us is one of the main experts that for decades now, that I've been aware of about the Real Ghostbusters. Second time on the show was with us when we did Masters of the Universe. Let's give a warm returning welcome to James Eatock. James, how you doing?
Hello, thank you for having me back, as they say. Yeah, nice to be back. Nice to talk about something other than He-Man for about 5 minutes in my life. Because guaranteed, when we stop recording, I'll be typing about something He-Man related.
Back in it.
Yeah, it's Real Ghostbusters is something very very close to my heart. Just one of those. It's like you look at all the different. Just talking about the cartoon side of things, or just as a brand side of things, growing up with, it's like He-Man. I've always said, in terms of animation, I've always said He-Man and She-Ra are my favorite cartoons. The best written cartoon of the 1980s was Real Ghostbusters.
Yeah.
At least for season 1 and the syndicated season. Then it kind of goes a bit awry, as they say.
Well, I think what was lucky for them, actually, I do want to add some context here just from my perspective. I think I first became fully aware of you with your involvement with the Time Life DVD box.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that was
a big part of that. I think you're in a lot of the commentaries and stuff too, if I'm remembering correctly.
Yeah, I mean, that was an experience that, oh my God, it's. I look back and I'm always grateful for every experience I've ever had, like, growing up in, as a fan of all these cartoons and then meeting the people and having some amazing experiences. But with that was like, I knew Andy Mangels was the producer of that amazing set, and he'd done he'd done all of the BCI DVD releases of like the Filmation cartoons, so He-Man, She-Ra, but also stuff like Dungeons and Dragons. What other shows did we do on there? Defenders of the Earth did a bunch of shows for BCI. And so he knew I was a big fan of Real Ghostbusters, and he said, "Hey, I'm doing a Real Ghostbusters box set. Do you know much about the show?" And I was like, And he was like, it was amazing. He said, we'll fly you out to Los Angeles for a week, and he said you can help me with the set. And I was like, okay, like what do you need me to do? And he sent me like a schedule. I've still got it to this day, the schedule and everything.
Oh, cool.
The filming schedule, because we got so much done. We set up like a filming location and for all the interviews and stuff and all the commentaries, everything was done under one roof.
Yeah, I'm curious. I'm curious because what you shot like in front of this like glass,
the weird glass
wall. Like they all had that.
That was so this was in this animation studio. It was called the animation studio was called Gang of Seven. It was run by Tom Tataranaowicz, who I was friends with, and he'd worked on the Filmation shows. Okay. So Andy knew him from working on the BCI sets, and Tom was like, "Yeah, you can film." Like Tom had no involvement in Real Ghostbusters. He was working at Filmation at the time, but he was like, "No, come and film the interviews at our studio." So that was that weird glass thing with a bunch of gel lights the other side was filmed in their meeting room. So you had a big table this side, which we had to move out and everything. Yeah, there was like a fairly sizable meeting room, but we filmed it was crazy. It was just amazing to see all these people, voice actors, writers, artists, everybody coming in. Like, sadly, some are no longer with us. Coming and going. It's nuts. It was like, I mean, that's scary. That was like nearly 20 years ago, but it's still so kind of fresh in my mind. But yeah, I got involved in that set, and we had such a blast doing it. Yeah, just so many kind of experiences.
Well, it was. I'm trying to find some pictures, if there are any pictures online of the interviews. But it was such a cool set because I mean, you've got creators of the series on there. You had J. Michael Straczynski in there. It was just such a great deep dive into the cartoon show, and it was such a love letter to the cartoon show. Like anybody that was dying to have all of these episodes, because by this point, by the time this DVD set came out, Like, I feel like just about all the other cartoons that we grew up with had at least DVD quality stuff out there. So, like, we're just desperate for Real Ghostbusters. And
no, and I mean, even sourcing. I mean, it was an eye-opening experience in the sense of we're in Los Angeles, and at the same time as doing the interviews and recording the commentaries, both audio and video, we did. We were also trying to find episodes, and we went to random warehouse. You think like, oh, the entire Geek library of Real Ghostbusters would be in one warehouse. If only we should be so lucky. So we were driving around all these random warehouses in Los Angeles that I guess had a bit of community or contact. And the other thing was, at the time, I think Geek had changed hands a couple of times, like under, like Filmation was owned by Group W. I think Geek Road, they was owned by another company, and so that, I think that had changed hands a few times. So things just end up everywhere. And obviously the most important thing to a lot of these companies is especially this day and age, is like the digital library. So we've got it there, it doesn't matter. But at this point we were just trying to find episodes of, there's a bunch of episodes with the where they re-recorded the dialogue with Dave Coulier and oh my goodness, I'm drawing a blank on her name now, the voice of the lead character in Rugrats. What's her name? Oh my goodness, that's Kath Soucie. I think she was the lead character, maybe not. But Kath Soucie replaced Laura Summer as Janine, and Dave Coulier replaced Lorenzo Music as Peter. A bunch of those episodes were floating around, so we were like, well, we don't want to deal with those. We want the originals. So there was that. It was just so much, just finding random. Like,
how do you do that? So did you like compile, like, how did you make sure you knew every single episode?
I've still got the Excel spreadsheet.
That's wild.
It's every column, like all the ticks and stuff.
Yeah.
Like, we had to figure out all the the little bumpers as well, the little ghosts, like,
exactly, yeah.
We're back after these messages. I had to go through all of those, and it was, I mean, I'm such a nerd for spreadsheets. When I get a blank spreadsheet and there's lots of things to fill in, especially color blocks, I'm like, oh, here we go. This is going to be fantastic. And so I look at that as like almost like a shopping list. It's like, I've got to take care of business. And so, yeah, I mean, it was a really beautiful experience, because a couple of years ago I was in America, like, what was that for? Oh, that was for this Faking Filmation documentary. But I was over there, and while I was there, like, Laura Summer, the voice of Janine, and I'm drawing a blank on people's names all of a sudden. Marsha Goodman, the voice director, like, hey, do you want to come out one evening and have dinner with us? I was like, okay. It's just like I'm sitting there chatting with people that worked on the Real Ghostbusters. It's like, oh, and you do that thing where it's like, oh, I forget that they're the people that they're just friends now. You know what I mean? It's like beautiful things come out of situations like putting this time life set together. So it was a real experience. Exhausting, but utterly rewarding at the end.
I can only imagine. Were there any episodes that were like, oh my god, I don't know if we're gonna find this one? Was there
Ghostbuster of the Year? We actually we had to rip the UK DVD version.
Oh my god!
I don't think this had been made public. It was an exclusive. We couldn't find Ghostbuster of the Year, which was from the syndicated season, anywhere. We were like, where is it? Where is it? And
how did the UK DVD get it? Like, how did they find it?
I don't know. Again, it's that thing of you've just got random shit everywhere. It's probably like this company in the UK who said, "Hey, we need a thing," and they were like, "Yeah, I'll send them. Who's gonna want this digibeta? We'll send it over to the UK." And someone in the UK is like, "Oh, I've got to record like the latest episode of, I don't know, Dallas on this or something." It just what I mean? It's that kind of really random stuff. But yeah, Ghostbuster of the Year was the we had to literally rip it from the UK DVD release, which was thankfully in good quality because it was PAL. So I was like, whew. But it was really interesting because you go in thinking you know a certain amount, and then speaking to these people, not just about the behind the scenes stuff, but what they consider the series to be. Like, some of them are like, oh, the animation's a bit shoddy. I'm thinking like, Jesus, that's like one of the best Japanese animation studios working on this episode. But it's, I guess, a lot of the writers, especially during that time, were writing understandably with the film characters in mind.
Sure.
So they're like, we're writing for Bill Murray, Dan Aykroyd, Harold Ramis, and Ernie Hudson, and Annie Potts, etc. So they're writing for those characters, and then the TV series comes, it's like drastically different visually.
Mhm.
But yeah, it was really, really fascinating. Like the amount of kind of stories and behind the scenes stuff that came out of it was, yeah, just really eye opening, and even kind of forms an opinion that I have about the series to this day. If that sounds a little bit melodramatic, but it's like, oh yeah, like I've heard so many stories about what they went through working on the show. That's like, oh, especially Straczynski with his whole thing about like,
absolutely,
I'm done with this, and then coming back for the season I think we're covering in this episode. It was like, oh, I better come back because you guys need saving. It was yeah, it was interesting to hear everybody's different takes on it, because also, yeah, people have different versions of events as well. So that was good. But
I'm curious, like, yeah. So for maybe those are watching this that don't know, so J. Michael Straczynski was the showrunner earlier on in the series, right? Primarily the syndicated series was his.
Yeah, season one, because this is the funny thing. I will say this off the bat. It's really frustrating, but I understand why it's this way. On Wikipedia, and in my mind, for the longest time, you had season 1, season 2, season 3, season 4. When I went out to film do all the content for these sets out in America, every person I spoke to that worked into production said, no, we didn't. We considered it season 1, syndicated, season 2. So what people think of season 3 is actually the syndicated season. So my brain calls it the syndicated season. That that 65 episode chunk, I think it was.
Yeah.
But everything on the ABC network, they called it was. I get why both sides work, because it's like, oh no, Real Ghostbusters was this many seasons, whereas the people at Geek were like, well, no, that was the syndicated one. But yeah, it was Len Jansen and Chuck Menville did all the ABC stuff. But Straczynski,
those seasons were only like 10 episodes, right? They
were all very brief. Like I think the first ABC season was 13 episodes, and admittedly there was a lot of good stuff in there.
Sure, yeah,
had a lot of really strong episodes in that.
Like Knock's in there, and right?
Knock's actually.
Was that syndicated?
I think it's the first of the syndicated.
Okay.
But the weird thing is, it uses it uses the same animation team that worked on the first season, I think. So it's really weird. My brain's trying to remember.
A spreadsheet that kept track of all of
it. Yeah.
That's the other thing as well over the years, has been trying to figure out which studios animated what, because obviously no one was credited. It was just like animated in Japan or whatever.
Like high level Japanese studios that did work on.
Yeah, I mean it was a variety. I mean, primarily for the first season, it was supposed to be Tokyo Movie Shinsha, but who did a lot of like the great cartoons of the 80s. But the other thing, the problem I always tell people with outsourcing, part of the thing I love about it, but part of the thing that frustrates me about it is that Geek would outsource to Tokyo Movie Shinsha, who would then say like, yeah, we can do maybe this many episodes, but let's outsource ourselves. So then it gets lost in, and you're like, who? There's a very famous episode of the Transformers called Call of the Primitives, and for the longest time we had no idea who animated it. It's a beautiful looking episode. It just turns out it was supposed to be I think it was supposed to be TMS, Tokyo Movie Shinsha, but they were just like, we've got too much work and we'll outsource it to this. It was almost like a bunch of animators who were up and coming from, like, I forget now, it was like a university or something like that. I forgot, like an art class or something. It's just like, oh yeah, we're all wanting to animate. Just random stuff like that. And with Real Ghostbusters, that syndicated season especially, it's so hard to track who did what. The only way I've been able to pinpoint certain studios is by stumbling upon layout artwork on eBay, and you'll get the studio written in Japanese. And so I speak to like a Japanese friend and say, what does this say? And I was like, oh, that says, Shinsha Tokyo. I'm like, oh, it's Tokyo Movie Shinsha. Okay, we know that. And like, it's a random bunch of studios. But that syndicated season that Straczynski worked on even had its own series Bible. That was the fascinating thing.
Separate from the ABC one?
Yeah. So Len Jansen and Chuck Menville did their one. And it's funny because their one's really good, because obviously they were hired, they worked on, like, they had the close ties to the movie, and they did that series, that first season. And then did season 2, etc. But for that syndicated season, Straczynski did his own series Bible, and it borrows a lot of what they did, but there's so much of what I think was frustrating him at the time with 1980s animation. And there's this amazing page. I wish I could find it. I should have had it on hand right now, but he basically lists all the stories they don't want to do. And it's quite amazing because it is specific to the syndicate. He's like, we don't want someone's birthday forgotten. We don't want the characters being shrunk down. We don't want like this one. And it was all like the tropes that you'd see in, you know, as much as I love the show, episodes like, you know, shit shows like He-Man or Ninja Turtles or Transformers or whatever. It was, Straczynski was saying, we want this to be, you know, a comedy horror. We want it to be like the film. And, you know, I love that movie so much. I've always said it's my favorite movie of all time. I saw it when I was a kid at the cinema. I'm that old, and it's just like, yeah, I can still remember seeing it at the cinema, and just the hype around it at the time was astonishing. I still remember like seeing it before I went to the cinema when I saw the old Ray Parker Jr. video, and I was like, what is this? It just looks so cool. And then I'll tell one little brief anecdote, which was like the one of the first disappointments of animation in my life was going to the local video store literally down the street from me, and seeing a VHS tape that said Ghostbusters on the side. I was like, oh my God, there's a cartoon. Picked it up. I was like, what the hell is this? And it was the Filmation one. It was like two guys and a gorilla, and it was obviously based on the 70s TV show. But I was just like, what's this crap? I remember, and then about 2 or 3 years later, I was it was maybe 2 years later. I remember my dad saying to me at some point, he was like, oh, have you seen there's going to be a Ghostbusters cartoon on? And I said, oh, that's just that. He'd seen like a trailer for it, I'll say. And I was like, oh, it's that one with the monkey kind of thing. And then he was like, no, it's got the green ghost and the guys in their suits. And I was like, huh? And then like literally the following day, I saw like a little TV spot for it. And I was like, oh, it's Real Ghostbusters. They're doing it. So yeah, that was quite beautiful to see that happen.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I remember even to the DVD thing, like Filmation's Ghostbusters had a DVD set before Real Ghostbusters.
I worked on that as well.
Oh, you did? I was so picked when I saw that. Not that I hate Filmation's Ghostbusters. Like, they're getting a DVD.
I had to watch that series. That was tough. Like, it's it's a bad show when you speak to people who worked at Filmation. They were like, yeah, we just wanted to do more seasons of He-Man and She-Ra at that point, and yet. Because a lot of like people I spoke to at Filmation, when they talk about Filmation's Ghostbusters, it's rarely with any affection. It was almost like, yeah, we did it. You know, it was a cynical show, really, in the sense of, look at the Ghostbusters, and it's like kids
are like they know it's not the real Ghostbusters.
Yeah, I mean, it's so funny how I don't know about you guys, but when I think of the term the Real Ghostbusters, I don't even associate what it's saying these days. To me, it's just the Real Ghostbusters. That's what it's called.
Mm-hmm.
But the very essence and why that title came to be is because they were saying, screw Filmation. We're the Real Ghostbusters.
Yeah, it's the same thing as like Amazing Spider-Man or Uncanny X-Men. It's Real Ghostbusters. Real. That's a weird superlative, you know.
Yeah, that's exactly it. It's just like,
are there fake
the Real Ghostbusters? Yeah. But yeah, it's funny to look back at that time and just think, I mean, obviously, Filmation Ghostbusters. The reason I say like I first saw it on a VHS cassette in a store VHS tape place was that they didn't air the show over here. It never aired. The first time I saw it was on cable in about 1993.
Oh wow!
And the only thing that fascinated me about the Filmation one was just that they were using stock animation. I was like, oh, that's kind of cool to see, years later to see Filmation was still doing that with Ghostbusters, but. Yeah, it was doing that DVD set was such hard work because I was like, don't get me wrong, I got paid handsomely for it, but I was just like, oh God, I've got to watch every episode of 65 episodes of Filmation's Ghostbusters, and so many people I know worked on that show, like writers as well. But it's a slog because I think, I don't know what it is about that show. I know people that like it. And people, people say to me, "Oh, you're going to cover it on your YouTube channel at some point?" I'm like, yeah. Yeah, I don't know if with much affection though, but I know Dan's covered it. It's just to me, it's just like, God.
So Jay and I can still say you couldn't pay me to watch that show.
I just not to do too much of a tangent, but I think one of the other shows that I was so bitterly disappointed in having to do, only because it had so much potential, but it just faltered, was Defenders of the Earth. Defenders of the Earth is like, when you look at the premise of that show, it's amazing. It's like, we've got Flash Gordon, we've got Ming the Merciless, we've got all these like characters from the King's Features. It's just like, and the series is so drab, and visually it's terrible.
Well, and it's tough because I saw that show when it came out, and you know, we have covered that on our channel as well. And in theory, you say these are all classic, you know, superhero science fiction pulp characters that have legacy, but no 10-year-old has any connection to them whatsoever. The only reason I knew who any of those characters were from the like how to draw books that you'd get.
Oh yeah.
And there was one that had like superheroes or something, so it had Flash Gordon and the Phantom in them, and that's really the only reason I knew who those characters were. I mean, obviously there was a Flash Gordon movie in '78 or whatever that was, but it was really because of those books that I had any connection to them, and that was years before that cartoon came out. You know?
Yeah, no, you got a point. Like you're right. I think watching that show, I know who Flash Gordon was, but yeah, I didn't know who the other characters were. Yeah, like I mean, Emiliano, who did the artwork, Emiliano Santalucia, did such great. He did all the BCI covers and did such a great job of like aping those different animation styles. But yeah, it was God, it was tough to. I had to do trivia for a lot of it, and because I didn't have scripts for this series, I'm like, what am I going to do for trivia? So I was literally watching an episode and said, oh, this episode, like, Ming is animated on the wrong layer, because I mean, thankfully the series was full of visual errors, but yeah, it was oh god, that was a hard slog.
I never watched that show. I've seen the toys though.
Great
and Phantom, of course, that's the Billy Zane movie, right? That's when I became aware of Phantom, or really at any significant level. But that's funny. I've never like had headspace to think about somebody having to put a DVD set together for a show they didn't like. So like, picturing you have to go through Filmation's goes, and it's like, oh my god, I can't do this.
I mean, I did a few other Filmation shows that I was like begrudgingly doing. I can't remember them all, but it was like, I think I did like, and this is no disrespect, I know it's a much loved show, but I didn't have any connection to it. But Groovy Ghoulies, I was like, I worked on that set, not as predominantly as I'd done on other sets, but I did a bunch of work for that, and I was just like, oh, I've got to watch this show, and it's just like, it's not really connecting with me. Just one of those things, but it's like,
it's tough. We go through that on our channel as well, where, you know, we need to cover a topic, we need to talk about its pop culture significance or lack of significance, and I have to be very careful that my disdain or disinterest or whatever doesn't come through in the delivery.
Well, that's why I still haven't covered Ghostbusters, because like, if I do an episode commentary for Filmation's Ghostbusters, I can come up with some interesting stuff. I've got the series Bibles and stuff and bits and pieces, but for the most part, I'm going to be saying, here's a show that didn't understand the visual style it was trying to create, because the storyboards are all like squash and stretch, but the animators were animating like a He-Man cartoon, so it really doesn't translate very well. It was just Ghostbusters was not a. I was recently offered
Filmation's Ghostbusters.
Filmation's Ghostbusters. Yeah, let's stress that. I was recently offered a Blu-ray set to work on a more recent cartoon. I was like, I can't do it. I was like, I was offered money, but I was just like, don't get me wrong, I'm very poor right now, but I was just like, I don't want to pretend that I like the show or that I'm invested in it. I couldn't do that. Like it just. Whereas I think at the time as well with Filmation's Ghostbusters, doing those DVD sets, there was still a fascination for like, oh, Filmation's Ghostbusters. I don't want to do this, but also maybe if I watch this entire series, I'll think that was amazing.
Sure, like a hidden gem or something. Yeah.
There was no hidden gems.
One last question about just the DVDs, and then I'll move on to like the toys. But so you have these DVD sets, right? Do Blu-rays or 4K even matter at that point? Like, because you're pulling off of like like tape transfers, right? Like, would it even benefit you to do a Blu-ray set of Real Ghostbusters or something?
I mean, it depends, because like, I don't know if you saw what the Germans did a couple of years ago. I worked with them on that Blu-ray set for He-Man and She-Ra, but they went to people think like, to this day, people think I'm lying still. It's people like, oh, they definitely had the reels. I was like, they didn't have the reels. They didn't have the original 35mm reels, because they'd look like amazing. But what they did was they just took the old UK PAL Digimasters from about 2002 or 3, maybe even like the late 90s. But the PAL Masters for He-Man and She were like pristine quality. And what BCI had used were like downgraded versions. What what Universal currently have are probably the worst looking versions of the series. But what the German company did was take those UK Digimasters, upscale them, but they did such a fantastic job that people still think like, oh, they're clearly used the real. I was like, they didn't use the reals. The colors are still incorrect in certain episodes, but that set proved that in the right hands with the right talent, and I'm not talking about myself, I'm talking about this German company, they were able to, and they put every effort in as well. They weren't just like, oh, we could just put a bunch of DVDs on a Blu-ray and go like, oh, look, there it is. They were like, no, we want to put every effort to make these like the definitive versions of the episode. So I went in and I replaced, end credits have been botched over the years with digital transfers. Like the She-Ra second season all had the original, like the 1985 Filmation logo. I was like, that needs to come out. We need to change that. So I put all these things in place, and I thought, is this company going to listen to my dorky, overly, OCD-esque kind of like, we got to make sure it's pertinent? They did. They were like, yeah, we absolutely will. And the end result was like a fantastic Blu-ray set. With Real Ghostbusters, the problem is that unless they ever, which God knows where they are, like ever found the original 35mm reels, like the negatives, they're only going to ever have the digital masters. And unfortunately those, because like just the way they were filmed and shot at the time by Geek, the quality's all over the place. Like there's some episodes, same happens to the New Adventures of He-Man show as well, because that show was produced by a lot of the same companies that worked for Geek. So that show suffers where you get episodes of different quality, but also you get episodes where there's like, it's ridiculous, like really weird frame ghosting, not in the traditional sense of like DVDs, but like actual like a hand will move and then you see like a trail and you're like, what that happens on Real Ghostbusters on like very few episodes, but they're there. And I think the problem with that is you can't upscale that onto a Blu-ray, because I think it would look really obvious of what it is. So I don't know what the solution is. I had a play around with upscaling certain episodes on like just a few standard shots, and I posted them online, and people were like, oh my god, they're doing a Blu-ray set of Real Ghostbusters. I was like, no, I just took a snapshot from the Collect Call of Cthulhu, and it looked bloody good, So it's tricky.
Oh goodness. Well, the work is appreciated. I will say that. It's clearly a labor of love, even if you don't love the thing that you have in a document. Okay, let's talk about the toys a little bit. So I know you're a little bit older, so probably when the toys are out, maybe were you still into the toy line at that time, or had they show up in the UK? Like, were they?
This is the thing. Like, it's really weird. Like with the Real Ghostbusters, well, many cartoons. Like I've said before, and I've said before publicly, that we got He-Man a couple of weeks in advance of America, like 2 or 3 weeks, but because of the way UK TV shows, cartoons especially, were aired, was like once a week, but also in batches. So even though we got He-Man before America, we were still getting technically new episodes of He-Man as late as the beginning of 1989.
Wow.
Like literally, Filmation had closed their doors in February of 1989. We're still seeing new episodes of He-Man just because they strung them out. Real Ghostbusters, I think that first aired, oh god, if I remember rightly, in the UK, the beginning, I think it was like beginning of 88, and that went all the way through until like the mid 90s. They were still showing new episodes, but like this season, we're going to cover like, I guess, season 6 or season 5, depending on which side of the production thing you fall. They were still airing that series in like as new in 97. I was just like, what the hell? It was it was
97.
It was like because it just, everything was very random with showings. We'd have like new episodes here, then no new episodes for a few years, and then randomly you turn on the telly one day, it's like, oh, Real Ghostbusters. Oh, I don't remember this one.
That's wild.
Like they were still showing. They never showed like the later seasons. We never got the Slimer cartoon either. But with
That's
the toy
good.
line,
That's actually for the best.
you say that, and I used to think that as well. And then, like again, when
Well, I guess you documented it in the DVD series.
when we did the DVD set, like speaking to the people that worked on that show, and you find out what the mindset was behind that cartoon, you're like, oh, okay. I mean, it doesn't quite work, but you get what they were going for. So
What were they going for? Just something for kids, or like anything that?
The whole thing behind it was, yeah, I mean, it was definitely aged down, but the other thing was like the people working on it wanted to make it like a Tex Avery cartoon. That was their whole thing, was we want to make it visually like a Tex Avery.
Yeah.
And in some cases you can see that, in others you can't. But I remember seeing. Oh, it's so weird, like how I first discovered the Slimer cartoon, because I like I say, it didn't air in the UK. I remember going to Canada in the summer of '89, going to like a flea market and finding a bunch of like American sticker albums. I was like, oh wow, these are different to the UK ones. I was like, Slimer and the Real Ghostbusters, what the hell is this? And it was like all very cartoony. I was like, oh, they must have done another cartoon. So that was bizarre. So, but going back to the toy line, sorry, yeah, the cartoon first aired in the UK in like beginning of '88, I think it was, and I think the toy line followed. Well, it would have followed the same year, but and it's probably the wrong thing to say on this show, but I was never the biggest fan of the toy line.
Yeah. How
dare you?
I know. I just thought I was looking for, and there is a kind of a happy ending to the story, I guess, to some degree. I was looking for, like, I know it sounds funny as someone who collected He-Man toys as a kid and very different to the cartoon, but I really wanted the Real Ghostbusters toys to look exactly like their animated counterparts. And so when I saw their proton guns,
toy line for you.
Yeah, I know, yeah. But like their big blue proton guns and the constant. The first thing I did when I bought the one, I think I got the Peter Venkman figure.
Yeah.
I cut off the constant stream.
Yeah.
I was just
like, very common. Yeah.
Oh, was it common? Yeah, I was just like, snip this bugger off.
Some break off. I think a lot of people just cut them off. Yeah.
Yeah, just like. But I had. So I remember I got Peter Venkman, and he came with like a ghost.
Yeah. Grabber ghost.
Yeah, that was the Grabber ghost, and then I definitely got. I'm trying to think. I got Janine because she came out with the Screaming Heroes. Was it? That was her first thing.
Well, her first was Fright Features. The
Fright Features. So that's what I'm getting confused with the thing. Yeah, the Fright. I got her in the Fright Features, and Ray I got in the Fright Features. So now we're approaching like 88, 89, and like I say, in the summer of '89, I go to Canada, and I discover Slimer and the Real Ghostbusters. But while I'm out there, I go down we go to Toys R Us one day. And obviously this is like, you know, I don't want to go on too many tangents, but the first thing I see when I get to Canada is like, what the hell are the deluxe Insecticons? What are these things? You know, because in the UK, we didn't get like certain Transformers. So we didn't get Shockwave or the deluxe Insecticons or Perceptor or Blaster or Swoop. We didn't get Swoop. Why did we not get Swoop? We got the other 4 Dinobots. We'd never got Swoop.
Weird.
Weird.
It was so bizarre. And I loved Swoop.
Yeah.
I was like pterodactyl. That's awesome. But she's like, oh, you can't buy him. It's like, what? So going down the toy aisle, seeing all these toys, and you know, He-Man was still present, of course. But I remember seeing the Real Ghostbusters. Like, oh, there was like, and at that point, it was I guess that's what ones were they? It was. I'm trying to figure out what it was. Yeah, Janine Melnitz had like a pink. This is terrible. I should know my stuff. Janine Melnitz came with like a pink skirt and like a yellowish top. Was that Fright Feature?
Screaming Heroes. Screaming Heroes. Okay, what was Peter's gimmick in that? What did he do? He was yellow and he had a ghost that stuck to his stomach and his hand spin around.
That's right. Yeah, because I bought him because he came with what I thought, and I still think to this day, was like probably the best proton gun. I was like,
yes.
I remember like seeing that and just thinking like, he's got a decent proton gun. So I remember buying Peter Venkman and Janine from that toy line because I was just like, wow. And then kind of just, I guess, checked. I was still watching the show, but then whilst I was in Toys R Us that day, I was like, what the hell are Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles? What's this?
It's all over, yeah.
And this was like, there was like a dedicated aisle.
Yeah.
I remember just thinking like, what's this nonsense? And then literally, I think it was beginning of 19. We didn't get the cartoon until 1990. And I was like, oh, it's the greatest thing ever. So yeah, very, very different.
Well, for you, it's Teenage Mutant Hero, right?
Yeah, I don't want to like to admit that publicly. It's a shame we in the UK must bear. It was I tell you what I do have. I've just realised I have on my shelf. It's probably not good for an audio podcast.
No, we're video now.
Grab it.
Oh,
Yeah,
we're video. Okay, I should have worn a decent shirt.
Yeah.
No, it's great.
We probably should have told you.
Yeah.
Well, I'm rocking my old first. This is going to age me and make me sound like I'm wearing horrible clothes. But I've had this top. It was the first thing I ever bought on the internet in October of 1995.
Nice.
Wow, that's held in there.
A hip hop group that had their own website in 1995. I was just like, the internet's so cool when I bought their merch. And at the time when I bought this, it was so baggy on me. And then the older I got, the more it just seemed to fit very comfortably.
It shrunk. Yeah, multiple times.
It shrunk, no matter how many times. But I can show you what I did pick up in Canada of '89. I've still got it. It'll take about 3 seconds.
Oh, you're good.
You're
good.
Sure.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I forget
to
audio.
Oh, I keep banging the thing. Here we go. Ghostbusters 2.
Oh, yeah.
It's like the promotional glass.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go. Whee.
Nice. That's a great shot of the Ecto One there.
It is a good shot.
But it was funny with this thing. So,
actually, can you put the Ecto? Is it not the 1A? Okay, it is 1A. It is okay. I was like, it looked just like the Ecto.
It does. I mean, they've added obviously the little trim to the side, and I think they've done a little bit of modification here, but it looks like it's based on the original like Ecto 1 model sheet. But regardless, it's like so in that summer of '89 was went out to Canada and saw Ghostbusters 2 at the cinema as well. So it was very much like and also bought the worst Ghostbusters coloring book ever that I always love to tell people about. Because
why was it terrible? What was terrible about it?
Because the character, I don't know if there was like a likeness rights issue, but Egon doesn't have glasses. He's got like hair that kind of goes out.
Is it for Ghostbusters 2 or Real Ghostbusters?
Ghostbusters 2 coloring book. Ray has a moustache.
What?
Yeah, I remember us just looking at this coloring book. We were just, my friend and I were just laughing.
Hold on. I think
I found it the other day. I remember like just thinking to myself, I wonder if I can. It was like a Ghostbusters 2. It's like I've got a.
I got the picture of Ray with a mustache.
Yeah, there you go. But Egon just has like this curly hair. It's just there's Ray.
Oh,
it's so bizarre.
Oh yeah. Oh my God. Yeah, I got Spangler here. I got a shot with 3 of the guys here. Hold on. Yeah, this is insane. Our researcher Allison Troy. On her YouTube channel, she does like coloring book things. I wonder if she has this.
There you go.
Like look at Spangler.
I remember my friend who I was staying with in Canada at the time, we were just looking at this and we were just laughing because we're like, why has Ray got a moustache and why does Egon look like a young kid? It was
yikes.
It's like whoever got the job to do the art for this like never watched Ghostbusters.
Or they were just told, whatever you do, don't make it look like the actors.
Yeah. We cannot afford the likeness rights.
Yeah.
That's wild. So this is I guess Louis Tully, who of course has an elevated role in Ghostbusters 2, as well as is brought into the toy line in 1990 and was brought into the animated show.
Yeah.
But I guess here, Louis's special glasses help him see that Slimer is behind him.
Oh boy. That's some special artwork right there. I mean, in fairness, like the costumes, right?
Yeah.
They get so much right and yet so much wrong at the same time. It's almost, if you look at that artwork, it's almost like the head's been redrawn. So you wonder if like the artist did the heads correctly. And then they were like,
oh, yeah.
I'm just completely jumping to conclusions there. But you wonder, like, you think, did they do it correctly? And then someone just went, what have you done? And they're like, Dave, come over here. We need to redraw all the heads. And he's like, I can't.
Fees are way too high. We can't.
Oh dear. But yeah, that was the coloring book I discovered whilst in Canada in '89. And like I say, the Ghostbusters toy line was still, doing its thing from what I saw. But then I kind of not checked out of the toy line, but just never kind of checked back in. And then the next thing I remember seeing was when I first got on the internet, like probably in early 1996, I did a tape trade with someone.
Mm-hmm.
And someone sent me, it was a bunch of He-Man episodes that in some cases not seen in years, in some cases not seen ever. So sent a bunch of episodes, and he'd recorded them all off the USA Network in 1990, I think it was.
Yeah.
So it had all the ads, and there was a bunch of Real Ghostbusters toy ads on there, like, and I was like, oh my goodness! And it was just like these kids going like, you know, cool new equipment, and there was like one kid goes super weapons, and I'm like,
Nice.
what this? And it was like these different, you know, things,
Yeah.
and I was like, oh, they're still doing Ghostbusters toys. That's cool, or at least
Yeah.
they were in 1990, 91. Yeah.
Exactly. And that's the toys that we're here to talk about today, James.
Segue.
So we have been doing looking at the kicking off by looking at the Kenner toy fair guides, which I absolutely love. So in 1990, you had Fashion Star Philly still hanging in there. They've been on just about all of these. Shadow Strikers, Baby Alive, Cool Cuts Kara. But some more popular ones: RoboCop, Beetlejuice, starting lineup, Batman, the Dark Knight Collection, and of course, Real Ghostbusters and the Real Ghostbusters section. Maybe I'll make my screen bigger here. Brings in, and it's just, we've talked about this a few times already, James, but and kind of your frustration with the toy line, but just the lack of synergy, right? So
yeah,
Ghostbusters 2 comes out in 1989. You don't have any toys that connect to the movie really whatsoever until 1990. And even then, the only thing you have is the Ecto-1A with the Ghostbusters 2 logos. But even the figures don't incorporate the Ghostbusters 2 logos, which is kind of wild. So this year, you had basically no more special feature figures as new figures. They replaced the Series 1 classic looks with the Power Pack heroes and then the Slimed heroes.
That's right.
These bring over the Proton Pack, and then these have these cool packs. I have some examples to share there. And then you have the Ecto-1A, which basically just gives a new sticker sheet to the same Ecto-1 vehicle that you had before. You had the Goblins, which are kind of fun figures, and then you have still carryover from previous years. So you had Screaming Heroes on the shelves. You still had the Hollywood monsters. You still had the Super Fright features, Fearsome Flush, Ectoplasm still hanging around there, and you still had, where is this is opening up here? You still had the Proton Pack. You had some toys that were shown that I don't think ever got made. I don't think this radar headgear set actually.
I don't recall seeing that before. No.
So that one never got made. This one did. The Ghost Snabber did get made. Ecto Charger again. So the slime thrower would have been great to have in 1989, but you got to wait till 1990 to get it. And then the Grab-O-Meter, the Ecto Blaster. And then, of course, you still have the Firehouse playset hanging around, and the original Proton Pack. And then I just love looking at the planograms. Just like take you back to maybe that Toys R Us you had in Canada, and all of the figures there on display.
Such good times of just like, I mean, over here in the UK, my local toy store was nothing like a Toys R Us. We did eventually get a Toys R Us, but our local toy store was like a proper, I guess what you would call in America like a mum and pop store, like very small, it'd been there for generations kind of thing. When the owner passed away, that was it. It was gone.
Yeah.
But it was like it was a very thin shop, but it was like a long shop that went on for ages, and then went up a staircase to a further thing at the back. We had like board games, and those things used to get like every brand in the 80s had in the old transfers. You'd have a background, you get a sheet of thing, and you'd scrape a pencil across them, and the image would appear on the actual background.
Yeah, it was like Magic Rub or something.
Magic Rub. I think that was that was the kind of thing. You'd like vigorously put the pencil to press down, and He-Man would appear on this background wherever you positioned him. But so we didn't. I didn't necessarily have those toy displays for like a long time until they opened up the first Toys R Us, or the ones I first went to was probably in about like 86, 87, something like that. But prior to that, it was just like this tiny toy store that just was like everything was in there. I say everything. Again, it was, much like the cartoons, we only got what was proven popular in America. So, we didn't have everything. Like Centurions, I remember seeing the three figures for about a couple of weeks and never again. Just like same with Brave Star. It's like, oh, it's Brave Star gone. Yeah.
So let's dive into these properly. So Power Pack Heroes. For me personally, I was really excited for this toy line because the suits, even though they weren't really Ghostbusters 2, they kind of had a feel for that. And maybe it was just because the Ecto 1A box art had these suits on them, but they kind of felt like, the darker suits that they had in Ghostbusters 2. But a couple things I loved about this series was one, kind of the change up on the suits, but they're still the classic kind of molds from the first series. But that we finally got a proper Janine. Unlike they didn't have any like features or anything like that. So I have her here. I don't have my original one, but
yes, that's
so just the classic Janine.
It's a cool color scheme as well, blue and purple.
Right.
I love that.
And so she has the same attachment because the Power Pack Heroes, they had some type of cool, action feature-y kind of proton pack. And so for hers, this part would come out and then
she turns into a car like a transformer.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah. So, so she'd wear the power pack on her back and then it would come out and you put her little ghost catcher thing as the steering wheel. And yeah, so since she has this slick little kind of go-kart car.
Oh, that's cool.
That she can ride on.
Isn't it funny though? Like, again, talking about Ghostbusters 2, you're talking about synergy, which is like such a fantastic thing to bring up, and how the toy line didn't reflect the movie.
Yeah.
The cartoon did, which was odd because animation production takes, arguably longer than toy production in terms of we got to create all these new cells, we got to do this, we got to do that, the whole process. When Ghostbusters 2 was, coming out, like they redid the model sheets for the real Ghostbusters, and Janine had her bobbed haircut, which was still one of my favorite other looks for Janine. But it's amazing that the bobbed hair didn't transcend into the toy line.
No, they were like, not my Janine. They kept kind of the classic Janine look for her.
Which, I mean, it's like, Gabby Payne, who created that original Janine look, loves that Janine because the hair was based on her design. When she was designing it, Gabby had this like cowlick and was like, I'm going to put that into Janine's character. So that's why Janine has that wicked hairstyle. But and that was always my favorite Janine. But yeah, the bobbed hair was my second favorite, just because one, I loved her in the movie, in the sequel. But when she turned up looking like that in the cartoon, she seemed to bring back that kind of piss and vinegar Janine, like a bit angry at the world.
Well, that was like a big episode, right? When Straczynski came back, like, Janine, you've changed, right? I guess.
Well, I mean, like, because obviously they did. It's so funny, like what happened to her character. It's like you have the original Janine, we all love. Then the Q5 group come in and say we need to make her more motherly. So they replace Laura Summer, bringing Kath Soucie. They make her a mum figure, and that was the whole thing. They say in the series Bible, Janine will now be a motherly type figure. She won't be. It's just like what. It's crazy. It's nuts to think, like the writers were like, but we like her as a strong, powerful woman that kicks ass and does. It's like, no, she's got to be a motherly figure now to the Ghostbusters. Like what? So they change her look. Then Ghostbusters 2 comes along. They give her the bobbed hair and kind of bring back the old Janine personality.
Which the movie was clearly influenced by the animated, or at least
that's the funny thing. Like, but obviously they couldn't give her that hair. So they went with their own, like the bobbed hair. Then the cartoon were like, well, let's do that.
Yeah.
And then they changed her look again to like where she had the sharp glasses and the kind of curly hair. It was slightly curly at the front, and that's when Straczynski came on and did the Janine You've Changed episode. And then for the last 4 episodes, the last season, they changed her look once again, and that was like, what did they do there? They gave her like a big like mum hairstyle. It was very odd.
Oh, wild. Well, then what's kind of even more wild in the Power Pack Heroes, right? So you had this Janine, which was pretty much based off of the earlier Janine. But then you had the first Louis Tully action figure, and his look is basically straight out of how he looked in the later seasons when he was brought into the animated show, right?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
And he has this crazy pack that catches his ghosts like that, and
power loader,
right? Like it's nuts. So it's a bit of a cost savings because they're basically, aside from these two newly tool figures, the other ones are just, it's the Series 1 molds. But yeah, these attachments for the Power Pack Heroes are just nuts. So getting these to stand up without like falling over,
I can imagine
for sure. But one of my favorites is the Egon Spangler. So he's classic Egon, but I love the way his suit looks. It's so late 80s, early 90s coded.
Yeah, you can see they're going into that as we would come to know, like the Generation 2 Transformers, where it's like just give them all crazy colors and random stripes.
Yes, I wonder who came up with that design aesthetic.
I don't think you could track it back to any single point.
No one's going to take the blame.
But it's just this huge. This is the most lopsided one for sure. But so you press it down and it
does it fly off or does it just you attach the ghost and it spins, doesn't it?
Yeah, there we go.
There you go.
I have to log it in.
Yeah, I remember the advert.
So just an insane, and then he had the Twister ghost, so he had this crazy companion ghost. And I don't remember how this one is supposed to kill him or whatever, get him, but
does it attach by its feet? Does it attach by its feet onto the thing?
Oh, you're right. The feet go.
Again, like all my knowledge of this is just from the advert, because in the advert you see it spinning around.
Yeah, let's see if it actually.
Yeah, there you go. Super weapons, like a kid said. He was right.
James, I love the encyclopedic memory you have for.
I like the fact that, like, when you boil it down, it's like, how does that help catch a ghost?
He's sucking it in. See, then
he's like, just making it dizzy.
It really does suck.
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
So anyway, so the Power Pack, that was the whole premise of the Power Pack Heroes. James, did you get these at all, or were you just like appreciating?
No, like I said, the only time my kind of only real interaction with them was seeing on that advert that I first saw in '96. I would even say that I doubt these were even available in the UK because, I think the first few waves definitely arrived in our shores, but then I don't remember seeing much. When Ninja Turtles came out, the toy lines I remember during Ninja Turtles were the Dick Tracy toy line. That was huge. I remember that was everywhere. Master of the Universe was still carrying on. Transformers, we had the in the UK, I think this was a European exclusive. We had Transformers Classics, which were in gold boxes. But I don't even remember, and like Ninja Turtles dominated, but I don't ever remember seeing Real Ghostbusters around that time.
Yeah.
It's just, I think it may have, they said, we don't want to do it anymore or something.
That's wild. Well, I mean, this was 1990. It was definitely on the downswing, right? Turtles had asserted its dominance kind of in '89, and Real Ghostbusters is hanging around. It has one more year in it, but it's the heyday is over into the 1990s. Some interesting notes here. The pogo stick or bouncing bazooka was his attachment or his weapon. Kenner used the same weapon for the pogo stick Joker in the Batman the Animated Series line. So it's basically the same effect that Peter had here. The one that I remember getting in stores was this Ray Stantz got him at KB Toys in 1990. And again, I still have this Ray. He's one of my favorites. And then again, just another great Winston. These have a soft place in my heart because I love the 90s looks and the fact that we got like a good Janine, not she could just wear a proton pack Janine.
Is it fair to, like, you guys are the kind of toy experts when it comes to all this stuff. Is it fair to say that, maybe kind of wrong here, like He-Man had his variants of his character, like, Battle Armor, He-Man, Flying Fists, etc. But was this the one that had was this one of the first ones to have the most mold reuse in terms of, like, basic characters and recolorings of only 4 characters for like 5 waves or 6 waves or something?
That's a great call out.
Because obviously then what took it to the next level was Batman, which went
Batman.
Yeah, I was just about to say this is Kenner's first year of Batman. We did the Toy Biz year, the Toy Biz year right after the movie, and this is the first year of Kenner Batman. So they're not quite into the depths of how much recoloring they do, but holy cow, are they about to take off?
Oh my god!
Like just one mold over and over and over and over again.
Just fantastic.
But maybe this is
I was just like,
this is a proof of concept, kind of, because in this year you have them reuse the 86, 87 first series molds, not just once but twice. Because you had the slimed heroes on the back half of 1990 that used those molds again, brought over the Lewis mold, dropped Janine this time. So the only time we got a proper Janine, or at least in that style, was at the beginning of 1990, and never again. So with like Hasbro bringing back Ectoglows, because she's not an Ectoglows, I would love if they did an Ectoglow to kind of to right that wrong. But yeah, and then the Ectoglows are also just reuses of those first series molds. So you could tell there's not as much budget here for these figures.
Yeah, maybe.
We got a lot of reuse for sure.
Yeah, that's a good call out though, because I'm looking here through my toy year chart that I've built, which is an Excel spreadsheet with a lot of different cells and a lot of different colors.
Nice. I like it.
Just so I can at a glance, I can see what else is on the shelves, what else is on TV, and all that other stuff. And yeah, I mean, you know, like you said, Masters of the Universe, there's a lot of parts reuse, but as far as like just straight repainting, recoloring the exact same mold, same characters over and over again, I'd have to look at where Ninja Turtles was at that point, because they're 3 years into that toy line at this point. But I think this might be.
That's a good point. But it's just, it's funny to me. Like Real Ghostbusters just never struck me. If you were to go back to like 1980, 6, when this toy line first came about or whatever, and say, right, what do you envisage for this toy line? I'd be like, right, so we'll have the main 4 Ghostbusters, and maybe a year or two later we'll do some variants, but we'll have, you know, you think about the villains from the cartoon and all that, and incorporate those, bring in Sam Hain, bring in, you know, Gash, all these different ones, is it Sandman, bring all these characters, and then they don't do that. And I think that was one of the disappointments I had with the toy line, was that I wasn't a big fan of the ghost enemies either. You know, especially when I saw them Stay Puft Marshmallow, I was like, I understand why he couldn't be.
To scale.
I was just like, is this it? Okay, but it's funny when you look at that toy line, the amount of times they reuse like the 4 characters. You know, forget about the molds for a second, but just like those. They were doing this line with the Ghostbusters, this line with the Ghostbusters. It kind of limits. I get that they have an assortment of ghosts, but it doesn't limit your playability. When you look at you compare it to other toy lines, like Ninja Turtles may have had different versions over and over again of our 4 main heroes, but my goodness, their assortment of friends, allies, and enemies was phenomenal. Insane.
Like Turtles is definitely like the spiritual successor to Motu in a lot of ways, right? Because just introduced all these crazy new characters and just so much stuff.
I mean, obviously, like Mark Taylor, who was the guy behind the initial Masters of the Universe like characters, he worked on a lot of those. He created Bebop and Rocksteady, and you know, a lot of those looks. You had Peter Chung working on the animation side of things, but it was Mark Taylor doing those. Was it Mark Taylor? Yeah, Mark Taylor and Errol McCarthy was the other one who did the card art on the back of the He-Man box. It's so funny, like 2 of the biggest toy lines have some of the shared creators working on it. It's like it's not. That's there's a reason for that, you know.
Certainly,
Motu should have just introduced 4 spunky turtles into the toy line.
They did finally. We got around to that finally.
yes, you're right. Yeah, Turtles of Grayskull crossover. Are you a fan of that crossover, James? As both a big TMNT and Motu fan? Did that one?
I mean, like, I'm not to piss on anyone's chips, but I'm just not a big fan of the brand.
I like your version of that phrase, by the way. That's
piss on chips. Yeah,
here at Sweeties,
but the cereal. No, it's just one of those things. Like I've been working on the brand every year since 2001. But a lot of the stuff I do is when I'm hired by licensees to work on nostalgic stuff, and I'm like, I'm cool with that. And I always like to say I always say my He-Man and She-Ra happened in the 1980s, and I'm cool with that. You know, don't get me wrong. I recently worked on something relating to the 2002 cartoon. I love that show. Like that show is something very special. But it's sort of like when I saw the crossovers, I'm like, oh, finally. And then the only thing that draws me to them, comic book wise, Freddie Williams. I'm just like, oh, I'm such a fan of Freddie Williams' art. See him on like Red Letter Media shows. I'm like, yeah, it's Freddie Williams. I'm a big fan of Freddie Williams. Oddly, at one PowerCon, I had a table next to him, and weirdly, even though I knew who he was at the time, it didn't register. So we didn't really talk until like the last few hours of the last day. I'm like, oh, he's awesome. Why didn't we chat the whole time? But yeah, like when it comes to the toy crossovers that I keep seeing with like they've done Thundercats and Ninja Turtles, it does seem to be very random rather than. I'm not going to say there's no thought put into it because obviously there are people putting thought into it, but it just seems to be like, oh, you didn't. The best way to put it is I've seen customs here and there over the years.
Sure.
That I feel do a better job, like of crossing over the worlds. But then it's Mattel doing the decision.
Well, I still have to finish my review of this, but I love what they're doing with the Thundercats, where you get like just the classic Thundercats look. So you can swap out the parts.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Crossover look, and then just get like a sick, retro Lino if you wanted him to be, which is a ton of fun. But no, back to the figures. Dan, are you? I mean, I know you weren't buying these to have fun with them, but like, just appreciating them from afar, like it being a toy dealer, or what's your thoughts on kind of that reuse kind of overload that kind of really started to ramp here in 1990?
I mean, it's a very interesting observation. And like I said, I was just digging through this chart to see if that's sort of where this idea comes from. G.I. Joe certainly recycled a lot of parts, and there was a lot of Frankenstein going on there. And as that line goes on, you do get specific molds that get repainted, but not to this degree where you're literally just taking the same mold and repainting it different colors. So that is a pretty interesting thing. I also liked James's observation about the limitations as far as having only a certain handful of characters that you can actually utilize. Other lines are constantly bringing in, refreshing the roster and expanding. And that's just not something that's happening here. And so I would be curious to see what the philosophy was at Kenner at this time. Obviously, it seems to be about the playability of these gimmicks.
That's a very good point.
And that, if nothing else, the figure is just a companion for whatever the other fun fidget thing is.
That's a really good point. It's like, we've got a gimmick, right? Just plop it on the Ghostbusters and color them like this, rather than.
Well, it's funny because you mentioned earlier the animation, them sort of wanting to go Tex Avery, and I was using Tex Avery as a description for like all the fright features stuff and all that sort of the exaggerated expressions for when they actually are scared and whatever. It had that kind of aesthetic to it, and so you can see those things at work in the design of the figures and the packaging artwork and all that other stuff.
Well, and it's funny because even we had Craig Goldberg, who is one of the writers on that upcoming Real Ghostbusters toys and art kind of book, and he interviewed a lot of.
Who's the other guy that's working on that?
Troy Benjamin. Yeah.
Troy took me out when I was in America in 2023. He took me out for lunch and he picked my brains about that. And basically, he kind of interviewed me for an hour and a half or 2 hours, and like. He wanted me to kind of form a narrative for the book, and I was like, I don't know about that, but I can provide you with a lot of artwork and stuff. But yeah, I'm looking forward to that book very much so.
In that book, like, he interviewed a lot of Kenner people, and there does seem to be a bit of a vibe that for the Kenner people is just like, well, I just want to do something fun with the line, and they weren't, I guess, and you can kind of see that to this theme that you're kind of illustrating here. They weren't burdened with having to expand or behold themselves to the lore or anything. They're just trying to make fun toys.
I was going to say, if anything, it's Ghostbusters toys. I was going to say it's almost like the one of the purest toy lines of that time. Everything else was, as you say, kind of beholden to the lore of Masters of the Universe or Transformers or Ninja Turtles. With this, they're just like, well, we've got Ghostbusters. Let's see what we can do this year with them. Like, what gimmick? What have you do? There's like Barry in development. He's like, I've found a way to make figures glow. It's like, will it give kids diseases? Probably, but it'll look great on the shelf,
It's true. It was, I think, Ectoglow was the first all glow in the dark toy line, like fully glow in the dark, I think. We'll dive into that next year when we get into it. But so Power Pack Heroes, I dig. But for here, this is where things are getting thin for me on the Ghost. The Goblins just pale in comparison to some of the earlier releases. These don't have like the ooze effects, like the Gooper Ghosts. I mean, they're fine, but they weren't my favorite. But they're kind of rare and expensive now, like Nasty Neck, Terrible Teeth, Terror Tongue. These things go for a pretty penny if you can find them. But something of note for me, at least, Nasty Neck was the last Real Ghostbusters figure that I ever saw with my own eyes on a store shelf at Toys R Us in 1993, I think it was.
Oh.
I just remember glancing. I was like, "Oh, hey, see you hanging in there."
Yeah. You just reminded me. Like I remember being in a not even a toy shop, like almost like a department store, and they had a tiny toy section near the back. This was 1996, and they still had a boxed Galvatron for like for about the equivalent of like $7. So I was like, I'll buy that. And then 2 years later, I sold it on eBay. But it was just like, my goodness, it was just so random talking. Weird, and be like, Galvatron, why are you still here? He's like, please help me. Just, don't worry, buddy, I'll save you.
Yeah, exactly. You're coming home with me now. What was the condition of the box? Did it hang in there okay, or was it all beat up?
It was a little bit dog-eared, but for the most part, it was still like the bubble was still, it hadn't yellowed or anything. I was like, where was this stored? Like,
yeah,
it was very strange. Like it would have been on that shelf for like I feel like a good 7 or 8 years or something. But yeah, no kids wanted poor old Galvatron.
Or Galvatron.
It wasn't Jet. I would have killed if it was Jetfire. I would have been like, ah.
Sure, absolutely. There's a reason Galvatron hung around. It's not the most.
Poor Galvatron.
G1 Transformers. And then for vehicles, we had the Ecto 500, which also could have been an 89 vehicle as well. Kind of again was never on the show. I don't think they even had a race car vehicle on the show. Like, you know, it could be
the closest they came was they did an episode called Afterlife in the Fast Lane.
Okay.
And did they have like a souped up version? I mean, it's one of the episodes that looks like it was animated in some random village in South Korea. It's really bad. It's just not good at all. But I think they had like a souped up vehicle in that, or a version of Ecto 1 or something.
This toy is okay. I have one. It's kind of small. It just fits one figure.
It looks. I always like the look of it.
Yeah,
I always thought that was a cool looking gimmick.
It's a little like old fashioned Indy car or something.
Yeah.
But just something of note for both this Ecto 500 and the Ghost Sweeper. I still remember it because I'm a nerd. But Fringe, if the TV show Fringe, had a flashback with Joshua Jackson's character, and he was in a toy store in the 90s or whatever, and they had Ecto 500s like on the shelf. And Ghost Sweepers on the shelf, and I was like, hey, some set decorator, I guess, got that one right.
Yeah, I think we mentioned it in a previous episode or two that a lot of these vehicles, especially the ones that aren't based on anything from anything, really have a Ninja Turtles aesthetic to them, which is like these kit bashed, homemade DIY kinds of assemblages of just stuff.
Yes, it feels that way. I mean, but in fairness to Ghostbusters, their tech is kind of kit bashy kind of looking, but it's very turtle.
But yeah, if I was just digging through a bin or something and I didn't know that this was a Ghostbusters thing, I probably would have thought it was Ninja Turtles.
This is a Ninja Turtles gimmick. Yeah, that's a good point.
Also, did they get a good deal on these like accordion hose things? Like,
do they still hold up? Because I feel like those accordion things would just crack and fall.
They crack. I have a Nasty Neck that I will not pull up because it's that little whatever accordion thing. And then Ecto 500s. Mine is intact, but it gets so brittle that I don't want to really move.
Every once in a while in the night, you can just hear a little bit more crack.
Yeah.
No, not now.
But my kids love that because, like, there's so many fidget toys now, and those are fidget toys. Just the what are they called?
I have no idea.
Bras? I don't know.
I don't know if there's
The Ghost Sweeper I did dig though, because it kind of got to that almost over 2 on the head of just like garbage men, which was kind of one of the original premises of Ghostbusters, right? They're just kind of doing their job, and so it's a fun little vehicle, but again, it's tiny. It doesn't really connect to anything. And then Slimed Heroes. So this is still in 1990. You got rid of Series 1 figures on shelves, so this was bringing back the Proton packs. This time they're in purple. And the big feature for these is you have little ghosts that are little squirt gun kind of guys. And then you can squirt cold water on them, and they'll look like they got slimed. And the commercial famously had the Statue of Liberty in it. Definitely bringing over those cues from Ghostbusters 2. But I did not get any of these when they first came out. I don't think I ever saw these on shelves. I didn't see these until I found one at a swap meet a couple years after they were on shelves. But I appreciate them, but I don't. These aren't as fun to me as the Power Pack Heroes. But I don't know, James or Dan, do you have any opinions on this? I have some here to share.
Yeah, as you know, James, the running gag for this whole series has been that I had like none of these toys. I was a little too old. I was absolutely did not watch the cartoon. I love the first movie, you know, like you just said earlier in the show. Love the first movie. I liked the second movie, but then that sort of Ghostbusters like ended there for me. I wasn't into the toys. I never watched the cartoon. I knew it existed, but I didn't watch it. So I have no nostalgic attachment to any of it. And so when I see these figures, this particular way that you're holding here, I would have been aware of it, but it would have likely just sort of faded into that neon 90s aesthetic that every toy line was embracing. And as someone whose primary toy line, even at the time, my primary interest was, you know, G.I. Joe and starting to, you know, keeping an eye on what Toy Biz was doing with Marvel action figures and that sort of thing. This whole neon aesthetic just would not have appealed to me in any way.
You don't love this nice mustard yellow.
If anything, like you said earlier, I would have just wanted straight up, give me the movie color jumpsuits. I want them as realistic looking as possible, even if they are sort of cartoony in their aesthetic.
Yeah, I like I think the gimmick is it's funny. The gimmick is something you think would have worked. The idea of them looking like they've been slimed would have worked in like wave 2 or something. Because I think, you know, kids love playing with the slime that came in the little containers, but at the same time, it's like, it's a bit of a, you know, like, oh, I've got to put it in and take it out. But it's like, oh, if I could just dip them in water.
Everybody here, actually, I am curious, James, your thoughts here. Are you slime on the toys, or you do not put slime on the toys? You don't mix them?
It's funny, like I never had the slime pit, or like I say, even though I collected Ghostbusters, or even I bought a few of the figures at the time, I wasn't big into the like putting slime on the figures. So I would say, you know, and especially not Grizzlor, obviously, even on the box. Don't put Grizzlor in there. Poor Grizzlor. But
I was a no slime ever. No slime. Like I liked slime. I had slime, but there were very specific conditions under which I would play with it.
Yeah.
I think I am the only one still that was pro slime on figures,
except for Pixel Dan.
Well, yes, we haven't had him on this series, but
that's true.
I love putting the slime on the figures. But fair point. But at least this, with these figures, you pour cold water on them, and the slime is just kind of like a painted effect. So you could kind of have your cake and eat it too. You could pretend they got slimed without having.
I'm just surprised they didn't introduce that gimmick sooner into the line. To me, it would have made more sense. Even like if you had the first wave of figures have that as a gimmick. But I don't know. Maybe it's in the forthcoming book by the guys. But maybe like Kenner rushed out those initial figures of just like, let's get the figures straight out there.
So we actually did get an answer to that. The first wave they pitched was actually Fright Features.
Oh wow!
But they didn't have enough time to get, because they're pretty complicated figures, all the mechanisms and stuff. So they just did the first series figures, which was just straight up, you know, looks with a proton pack with an effect, but not, you know, to a lot of people's points, not the most compelling, and a lot of people just cut off the streams. And then Fright Features came out in year 2 once they had enough time to like make the figures and everything.
Right.
So
okay, that makes sense.
Kenner, they wanted like just cool effects from the beginning. And so going to this was kind of making it a little bit cheaper. They already had the molds. It's not as elaborate of an effect. To your point, would have made sense to have this earlier. But alas, they didn't hear until the back half of 1990. So they all had different little masks. They had the companion ghosts that, you know, you'd suck up the cold water and they could spray the figures, and then the proton packs. Lewis got carried over. Janine did not. Some cool notes about this line, or I guess just one. You mentioned that Screaming Heroes, Peter, he came with a trap, the first trap. And he came with a Neutrona wand that was more accurate of a Neutrona wand. But the first time we got ecto goggles was with the slimed
wow
stance. So he has two different kinds. He has a blue one that I have on my other figure, and then he has a red one. I think the red is more rare, but it's the only time you got ecto goggles, like a swappable accessory, which is kind of cool.
That. You learn something new every day. I like that.
Yeah. So that's the Slime Heroes figures. You know, they're okay. I feel like out of all of all of the different lines, I feel like maybe they would be ranked last. I feel like I don't know. Maybe
have you guys done a rank? Like, what's your favorite of the waves?
Me personally, probably series 1. That's all I wanted as a
I was
kid.
going to say, take that off. Let's just all say, all right, that's obvious. Everybody's number 1. What's after that?
God, it's probably too cliche to say than the Power Pack Heroes, but probably Power Pack Heroes. I really dug those. I really dug them.
Which ones were those?
The ones these ones.
Oh, okay. Oh, the ones we just talked about?
Yeah. James, how about you? What would you rank?
I'm trying to rack my brains. I'm sort of like, have you got all of them on this document?
I can. This website here, yeah, Toy Collector's Guide, I think has them all. But just describe them to me, and I'll pull them up.
I think I'd probably go to although I don't remember seeing the other ones. I did like what was the second series? That was
Fright Features.
I still think those ones were really kind of captivating to me, even though I owned the Janine one of that and the Ray toy.
Yeah,
because Janine was all in pink and Ray was in that kind of like brownish orangey jumpsuit. Yeah, so I owned that Ray, and then I owned the Janine as well. But I kind of liked that gimmick. Although Winston used to terrify me because his jaw broke, didn't it? Almost, it was like it's a terrifying feature.
Winston had two like really open, because Super Fright Features had like his whole like tongue, like speaking of Tex Avery, like his whole mouth rolled out of his.
Oh Lord! But yeah, I think the fright. And then we had the.
Where's the Janine?
Wave 4.
Yeah, there's
Janine.
So fright features for you. How about you, Dan? Where do you?
I'll just say I'll say Ecto Glow because I like glow in the dark stuff.
All right, there you go.
Like I said, hey, the engineering on all the fright features and all that stuff is really, really fantastic. And just from a physical, technical achievement of a toy, of the mechanics of the thing is really, really fantastic. Especially when you consider how durable those mechanisms need to be, because they're just going to be manhandled by kids, thrown around, taken in the tub, buried in the dirt, and still expected to function. So that's all really, really
work
cool.
A lot of the time too. Yeah, it is incredible.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's again, like I was talking about those USA Network recordings of He-Man that had the Real Ghostbuster toy ads on. Like it was the first time I ever saw these kind of waves. They also had the ads for the I guess at the same time the Beetlejuice toy line. And I thought some of the gimmicks of that toy line were fantastic. Just from the advert I've seen, where like a character's like his head changes shape, and then you've got one where his head goes down his arm, and because obviously it's Beetlejuice, you can go wacky with the features. But yeah, really some really interesting gimmicks on that. Like there was one called the Vanishing Vault or something, and you put him in, you do a switch, and he's gone. It's like wow.
Beetlejuice is definitely like a parallel line to Real Ghostbusters in a lot.
Yeah, you can easily just put them all in the same pile.
Yeah. And they kind of look similar. Clearly, like they probably had the same teams working on them.
Probably absolutely.
But so for role play toys in 1990, and these I think are pretty much the last ones. You had Ecto Blaster, Ecto Charger, Grab-A-Meter. Both of these are, or at least these two, the Ecto Blaster and Grab-A-Meter, are kind of just like Nerf guns. It's kind of put them through. I didn't have either of those, but the Ecto Charger pack was the slime blower, even though maybe they can't call it slime blower because Mattel or whoever owns slime as a trademark. But I remember seeing an ad for this in a newspaper. We all went to. I've talked about how my mom was in figure skating, and she had a figure skating competition in San Francisco. So we were in a hotel, and I saw the advert for this Ecto Charger pack, and I just begged my parents. I needed to have the slime blower. It's from the movie. I gotta have it. And I think it was before my birthday. So for my birthday that year, I got this Ecto Charger. So I had this.
Very cool.
Still, it pales in comparison to the Proton pack, but still a fun pack.
What's the last one? It looks like a ghost has been chopped in half. What is that?
So it's like a little, like your basically claw, you know, like where you just pull the lever and the claw opens and closes.
Oh, right. Okay.
And then the bottom part has like a little kind of Nerf. It's not really Nerf, like a little launcher thing on it. So it's all right. We're kind of scraping the barrel here. For
I was going to say, it feels like they were kind of, right, what can we work into this toy line? Well, I'm working on this gun. It's like, that'll do. Paint it blue.
Good enough.
That claw thing, like how many like cheapo toys
ubiquitous. Yeah, for sure. It was everywhere. Yeah.
So we got this tech over here. It's free. We just plug it in here. No play sets, and the last vehicle for 1990 is the Ecto 1A.
Oh, was that actually the last ever thing they did?
Well, no, I'm so sorry. The last vehicle will be the Ecto Bomber in 1991.
Right, okay.
But Ecto 1A, basically same mold as the Ecto 1. You just had a sticker sheet on it, so you had all of these slime stickers that you'd put on it. It was kind of like the later version of the X-Wing where you have the damaged effect. It kind of could ruin the thing if you didn't do it well or do it right. But, I remember getting this one. I remember my mom putting on all the stickers. I still remember she was sitting on my bed in my room, and she was just like going through it. And I just remember her being really pissed at all the stickers of this one because it's insane the amount of stickers this thing has to make it look like the Ecto 1A. But Mom, thank you for putting those stickers on it way back when. But so I personally love this vehicle, even though there's nothing different about it than it's same ghost, same features, same everything as the regular Ecto one, just a new sticker sheet. So again, Kenner just making use out of stuff they already had just to make
very much so, yeah.
I will say it's hard to get a vintage one that still has the stickers. The stickers don't hold on very well because they weren't really made for it. So it's hard to get a vintage one that isn't missing a whole bunch of stickers. They just kind of fall off in the modern sense. And that wraps up the 1990 figures. James, any other 1990 notes? You were talking about the cartoon series that maybe we haven't talked about as we wrap up this episode.
I don't really know. Like, I mean, yeah, the cartoon was, I think,
How many
running on empty.
Were there in 90?
Say again?
How many episodes were in 90 at that? Because it had to be running down at that point, right?
Oh my God. I think there was about, I feel like, what was that season? I feel it was like 15 or 16. Because then there was the last 4 was the final season. But yeah, at this point, I think this was the season, where Straczynski kind of came back. But unfortunately, they, the music was different now. Shuki Levy had left, so his music wasn't being used on the show. It was like almost like a corporation that just churned out music, started doing the music for the show. The animation was, I think it was all done in Korea at this point, so it was not even, there was no Japanese animation involved, unfortunately. And yeah, it was like really kind of, I mean, for me as a fan of the show, it was like really kind of running on empty.
Yeah.
I often like talk to people about the cartoon. It's like, I watched the first season, the syndicated season, and then when it gets to those later seasons, as soon as the voice cast changes, it's like, not really my cup of tea.
Isn't it wild how like once Lorenzo music's gone, it's like, I think
it's how do you like, you can't, even though people could say like, well, one of the things I get on, like if a video on my channel does reasonably well, like a YouTube short or something, if it's got Real Ghostbusters related and suddenly it catches like a bit of attention, the comment I always see is like, oh, it sounds like Garfield. So my thing to that is, oh no, to me it sounds like was it the doorman from what was the TV show, Carlton the Doorman? I described because he played the voiceover in that, what was it, Rhoda show, right? So this was prior to his voice work. So this is when he was a producer on this Rhoda show. So I always just fire back with that because they're like, what's that? And it's like, well, then what's your point about Garfield? It's like, I get it. But
there's like that weird thing where then Bill Murray also played Garfield in the
that was, I mean, that actually got me a job years later. I went to a it was weird, a weird connection to how I first started working on DVDs. I was this company in the UK, Contender, got the rights to distribute He-Man on DVD. It was the first company outside of Germany to do He-Man on DVD. So we got these digital masters, and I had a meeting with like the guy from Contender. He's like, do you want to go for lunch and we'll chat and stuff? And it's like, yeah, we're chatting fine. And then the moment I knew I was definitely going to be hired was when this is like 2003, I think it was. We're chatting. we started talking about Real Ghostbusters. Turns out he liked it as well. He's a few years older than me, this guy. And we started chatting, and then it's just like, oh yeah. We started going, oh yeah, well, like when when they replaced Lorenzo Music, and then when Bill Murray did the voice of Garfield, and it was just like, oh, we're both on the same page, so I've definitely got this job. But it's bizarre how for so many people like myself that change does kind of take you out of it slightly. And I mean, they even, not to get too much into a tangent about the cartoon, but the series Bible for that second season on ABC specifically states Slimer will now look at Peter like his hero, and it's like, oh no, and that Peter kind of may be frustrated with Slimer, but not really annoyed at him anymore. It's like, well, you've completely changed the dynamic.
Yeah,
like that was the same thing where they said. They were talking about Slimer like a pet, and it was just like, no, what are you doing with this show? So it became like,
too many studio notes.
Well, plus the funniest one that I think often goes unchecked is they made Ray slimmer. They slimmed him down, which is I always thought it was quite a bizarre one. And just
I think that might have been because Dan Aykroyd is kind of ticked that Ray was heavy.
Yeah, when they did the Slimer wouldn't do that TV show, so that was weirdly a UK production. And when they did that, and he was interviewed, he said he goes, I'm the fat one, and it's like, I mean, now that may be applicable, but back then it wasn't like anyone looked at Dan Aykroyd as like a fat guy. But
no, I mean, they were all just kind of like middle-aged men and didn't really look like anything.
I remember, like when I first saw that like I say, my dad said, oh, there's like the Real Ghostbusters cartoon. I was like, oh, well, the Ghostbusters cartoon. I watched that TV spot for the first time. Before I even saw the first episode, just like seeing the spot, I actually thought Ray was Bill Murray's character in the cartoon, because he had the kind of receding hairline.
Yep.
And whereas the Venkman character in the cartoon looked more svelte like Ray, so I was just like, oh, that's Ray. And just like,
I had the same thing as a kid at first.
Yeah, I'm sure many did. It couldn't have just been us two.
Yeah.
But it was. It's weird with that cartoon. Like I recently did on my channel, last year, I did like a top 10 Real Ghostbusters episode, like a proper deep dive into it. And I said, like, number 10 was Janine, You've Changed. And I said, it's the only episode from anything past the first 78 episodes that I consider to be in the top 10, because beyond that, it's like, there are good episodes here and there, but nothing beats those first 78 episodes because they're so good.
Yeah,
so good.
Agreed. It's like I've done a rewatch a few times, but only a whole rewatch once, because like every time once Lorenzo Music's off, I'm like, I'm okay.
Maybe it's weird. Like Dave Coulier is just like, okay, Spud, and it's like, what? And I remember him being interviewed about it, and he said he was trying to
like a Bill Murray impression, right? Yeah,
Bill Murray in Caddyshack, and I was like, why are you doing that voice?
Like, he's in Ghostbusters.
Yes,
you can do that voice. Yeah.
Just so weird. It's like, why are you doing the kind of slightly slow, dim-witted like guy from Caddyshack? Like, okay, everybody. It's just, oh, that's the voice you're gonna. Okay, I guess that's the voice we got. But yeah,
I'm on Alanis Morissette's side in the whole thing, so that's how I feel.
What's that? I don't know. Sorry.
Well, you don't know? Oh, well, do yourself a favor after this show episode, James. Just go Google Dave Coulier and Alanis Morissette. But one of the greatest albums of all time is directed towards her breakup with that gentleman.
Wowzers! I did not know that.
Oh yeah. Anyway, on that note, let's wrap things up here. James, thank you so much for coming on to talk Ghostbusters stories, but also just your history with the show and just the documentation and preservation of a beloved show, and your work that you put into it is so important. So I'm so grateful that we got to have you on one of our Real Ghostbusters episodes, because you know a lot more than Dan or I know about a lot of these things. So I really appreciate it.
But thanks for having me on, guys. Really appreciate it. It was always fun to talk about 80s things.
Yes. For those that aren't following your current stuff, where should people check? Because you have your Serial Geek YouTube channel. You're doing like deep.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much where I keep telling people to go. It's like, check out Serial Geek TV on YouTube, and that's where you'll find me with this background, but more scripted as opposed to like me, red-faced and sweaty, being like,
it's hot in the UK right now, right? No,
it's really bad. It's really hot.
Hot on Earth.
It is
It's so hot at the moment.
but there's no AC in the UK, right? So you just kind of die out there.
Yeah, we just die. But bear in mind, like, what's hot for us, for like someone who's been to Los Angeles numerous times, is nothing. You go to Los Angeles. The first time I ever got to Los Angeles, I was like, I think I might have to leave because I was that scared of the heat, and then I got used to it after about an hour. But I was just like, oh, this is so scary.
Just go to Florida, James. Actually, never go to Florida, but if you really want to feel heat, go to Florida. Awful, terrible. All right. That will do. Dan, any big things coming up for you on the Secret Galaxy?
Same thing generally for us. Every Thursday, 5 o'clock today, we put out the history of Mantis for all of you early 90s superhero fans.
Hell yeah, that's awesome. And Dan and I will be at Comic-Con this year.
My first Comic-Con, so
I'm so excited. Dan's finally doing it.
Wow.
He's gonna be like, for day one, he's like, actually, Jay, I'm going home. I can't do this.
It's too hot.
If it's a hot year is tough. But usually San Diego's really nice and temperate, but there's been some gross years in terms of the heat. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. But anyways, thanks again to Allison Joe's research. Next episode will be the last episode of this series, 91, and joined by Ryan Dole, the Ecto Glow Elite Master himself, to close it out. But until then, we'll see you all next time. Hasta luego, and goodbye.
Later.